Hello, I'm Charles Gross. Welcome to the Critic Circle. Our special guest critic this week for our On the Aisle review is my good friend David Lefkowitz. David is a critic, the author of the plays The Miracle of Long Johns, and co-writer of Shalom Dammit with Rabbi Saul Solomon. And you can hear his weekly podcast, Dave's Gone By, where a frequent guest is our own Leslie Hoban Blake, going head-to-head with David Shord in a weekly trivia contest. Dave, welcome.
Well, Charlie, it is delightful in so many ways to be back on Two on the Aisle, where for more than 2 decades, I was often a guest on the show with you and Jeff and Leslie. And it's also great to be back in the theater. The show we're going to talk about is the first production that I have seen since March of 2020. So it was a big deal for me to step back into a Broadway theater.
You could not have made a better choice to return. This is the Lehman Trilogy. And I had heard wonderful things about this show, but I think the history of the Lehman Brothers, trading big Wall Street company that after 150 or so years went bankrupt in 2008, it's going to be this very long, dry, preachy, anti-banking, anti-capitalist evening. And then I stepped into the theater. I could not have been more mistaken. This is a 3+ hour show, but it sure feels a lot faster. It's moving, it's theatrical, it's clever. It looks simple, but it is so beautifully done. This is the story of Lehman Brothers, but the story of the 3 Lehman Brothers. Jewish-German immigrants who settled in the first part of the 19th century in Alabama. They were storekeepers. Then they became cotton brokers and traders and then bankers, and they reinvented themselves. In fact, one of the show's cleverest devices is how they keep putting a new sign on their store and later up on their office, and they built what became, I think, the 4th largest bank and trading company in the United States. And the show focuses on the brothers. There are these 3 ultra-talented actors, Simon Russell Beale, Adam Goodley, and Adrian Lester. They play the brothers, and they play every other part in the play, with the exception, I think, of a janitor. And you see how they spun on a dime. They were always looking out for new trends, for new opportunities, and seizing them. And it's fascinating. And then we go through the Civil War into the 20th century. And then the second generation of Lehmans comes and starts running the firm. And we see what they do and how they build the firm up to the Great Depression, where the 3rd generation has to take the company through that. And we go up all the way into the firm's bankruptcy in 2008, which is where I think the play runs into a few relative, and I stress relative, problems.
Yeah, we both agree on that part of it, Charlie. We first agree that it is a riveting, compelling evening at the theater. And I was worried when I first started watching it about 5-10 minutes in. I'm like, oh, it's readers' theater. Because for I would say 80% of the script, it's the actors essentially telling what is happening rather than having actual dialogues with each other. It's really very narrated all throughout. So I'm like, oh, okay, there's going to be a lack of drama here. No, mostly thanks to director Sam Mendes. And there is some poetry to the script, a lot of repetition, a lot of putting things in your mind that you're going to remember later. A line here will have relevance, an hour later, and you'll remember that, aha, that's why they set that up. Also, potato is mentioned frequently. One of the characters refers to himself as a potato, and that's very exciting to me for reasons that I won't get into here. But we also agree that the one stumbling block of the play is the 3rd act, because I feel that it could have been a great play had they really just stuck to the family and the family dynamics rather than telling the whole story of the firm. Because towards the last 20, 30 years of the firm's existence, it wasn't about the Lehman Brothers. It wasn't even Lehman family anymore. So they have to introduce new characters right at the start of the third act, and we get to know them a little bit, and suddenly, oh, they're running the show. And then, like, the last 20, 30 years, this sort of happened, and very quickly, and then suddenly, oh, Firm dies. Like, wait a minute, you just took us through 3.5 hours to sort of let us down, and like, oh, that was it? Whereas everything that was happening in the first 2 acts, I'm like, gripped.
If you want to find out exactly how the firm imploded and went bankrupt, you're not going to learn it here. Look it up on Wikipedia, or look for back issues of the Wall Street Journal, and that's a disappointment. But it does not take away from the brilliance of this play. As Devlin created this amazing set, which is a modern Wall Street office with projections all around it. And projections can be a problem, but in this case, I think it's the best use of them since the curious incident of the dog at night. It really enhances what we have. And I think they use boxes.
Boxes as filing cabinet kind of boxes, but then it becomes a staircase. It becomes border, or things against the fire. It's just marvelously staged. I do wish it had been a bit more about the family dynamics and the morality of what they were doing, because we root for them. They're the protagonists, this family, this Henry Lehman who comes over. But at the same time, really mostly in the back of our minds is like, well, they're trading in cotton, and they're trading in plantations and plantation owners. Do we realize that these are Orthodox Jews from the old country coming from a back history of slavery and a modern history of oppression, and then essentially contributing to the economy of the South, and being really disturbed when the South falls down during the Civil War, and not having a moral reckoning of any kind about that.
You mentioned they're a Jewish family, and you see how that plays a role in the lives of the 3 brothers, but less so their descendants. You see when people die, how they observe the death. And when one brother dies, they close the firm for 7 days to sit Shiva. But later on, not so much.
3 minutes. When one of the last Lehmans dies, they don't even close. There's businesses continue. Oh, Lehman died. Oh, well, which is so different.
One beautiful touch that I love was Candida Caldrecott, who was a pianist. She accompanies the dialogue during the show. There's an actual piano. She's actually playing it. This is a play that you have to sit in the theater to really experience. This is not something you could stream.
And think about what we're saying about this play, that it feels like an epic. It's an epic story. And what is it? It's 3 actors and a piano player.
Yeah.
And of course, the amazing set design, but it's sort of like 3, and that creates an epic.
And you're thinking, oh yeah, that's why I'm going back to the theater.
Right. That's how I felt.
Which is why, out of 3, with a maximum of 5 stars or playbills, I am giving this, despite the petering out at the end, I'm going to give it a full 5.
Wow. I can't go that high, but a solid 4.25, maybe even 4.5. Yeah. Lehman Trilogy.
Okay. Well, David, thank you so much. Wonderful to have you back. And
hope to be back soon again. Thank you, Charlie.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And that is our show for this evening. And we'll see you in the Critics Circle.